Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
how's everyone?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Um, so yeah, I think we'll just wait a little bit for it to pick up a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
how's everyone's morning?
Good. I just had a little I'm not sure. I mean, I've watched live streams before. I've never really participated in one, so I
Yeah,
was at first kind of like, oh no,
yeah.
how do I enter? Um,
Like I
I
got your
sent you a
email.
yes, I sent you a frantic email. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I managed my feelings. But no, we're good. We're good. So we're all in different time zones then, I guess.
Yeah, Teresa, I don't know how you're doing this right now.
You're on the West Coast? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm currently in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very early.
Um, yeah, we'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll just get started on it.
Okay.
I also did like a frantic, I was telling Teresa yesterday, I did like a frantic, how do you do Instagram live stream? Like I know how to do it, but I did it anyway because it's like, what if something has changed?
Exactly.
And a lot has changed with Instagram Live.
Yeah. I don't use like I don't do a lot of the technical stuff with our platforms. I kind of just like approve things
Right.
to go up on them, but I hear people like every time there's a change in a platform, people are having to relearn and I hear complaints about it a lot. So
Yeah.
so I understand that like I'm glad that it wasn't me having to Google that. So
Okay, let's get started. So, hi everyone, and welcome to GirlUpUK's first live stream for the year. We are starting off with Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is on the 28th of May, and we are working with Aunt Flo and Citron Hygiene to bring everyone a little bit more awareness to the day, but it goes beyond the day, and it's just more awareness on the topic. And we're gonna go into it a little bit more with Krista as she just floods us with everything and anything she knows about it. Um, and yeah, let's get started. Krista, who are you?
okay, so my name is Krista Pluis. I'm based in Canada, just outside of Toronto. I'm the head of marketing at Citron Hygiene. So Citron Hygiene is a washroom hygiene services company present in Canada, the northeastern US, and the UK. If you're tuning in from the UK, you've probably heard of it. We're one of the slightly smaller hygiene service companies over there, but in my opinion, the best one. And we do a lot of work. A cornerstone of our business is menstrual hygiene, waste disposal, and free vend, period, and tampon vending. So we do a lot of advocacy work and education and marketing around free period products and why it's necessary. So as a for-profit company, we do a lot of work to push the needle forward with getting free pads and tampons in all of our customers' washrooms and all away from home washrooms. So that's who I am and part of what we do. Oh, and the Ant Flow connection I should probably explain.
Yeah.
So Ant Flow is a woman-owned period product vending company based out of Ohio in the U.S. Antflow was founded by a very young woman named Claire Coder, who has just done so much. She's very passionate about free period products. She founded Antflow when she was 18 years old. She's brought the company to where it is now, and last year we became the exclusive partner of Antflow in Canada and the UK and the Northeast US. So we work with Antflow to distribute their products and service their dispensers across Canada and the UK and the Northeastern US. So we work very
Amazing.
closely with them.
Amazing. So let's get a little into, I think, what Menstrual Hygiene Day means, because I think there are like so many like diverse ways of people defining it. So I guess like in line with like the work that you do and that you're associated with, what does that mean to you?
hmm So I think Menstrual Hygiene Day is a day of building awareness, and I think that our lived experiences of menstrual hygiene vary so hugely across the world. I think in more developed countries like North America and the UK, we think that there are, we think I think a lot of people have this perception that we're doing okay, and we are. There are a lot of people who have worse menstrual hygiene care than we do, but we do in our societies have people who are unable to access period products.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us, since we don't see it and we don't experience it, don't really understand that it exists, but there are very real barriers to people accessing the hygiene facilities that they need, clean water. I mean, here in Canada, we have enormous issues with clean water access in our northern territories and more rural areas that are removed. There are financial barriers. There are stigmas depending on where you are, your cultural background, your upbringing. Any number of things can play into that. It also has to do with a lack of education around menstrual hygiene. So, you may have families who have just generations of thinking that periods are dirty, that it's not something to be talked about, that it's a private issue, and then you have young girls not understanding what's happening to them when they get their period and not understanding how to deal with it, not knowing who to go to for a period product. So it covers so many things, access to hygiene facilities, access to education, access to the period products themselves, and also just being able to talk about it freely without feeling ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
So those, sort of affect all of us in different and varying ways. But Menstrual Hygiene Day really covers all of those topics so that we can just sort of explore what it means to us in our circles, our societies, and globally.
Okay, and just touching on what you said about the lack of education, what do you think, or where do you think the improvements need to come in from, and like how, when you say lack of education, do you just mean like textbook wise, or do you just mean like conversations that happen in school? Like, how would you go about that?
I think it's both. I mean, certainly so in theory, the internet is great because you can access information, but we all know that the internet has many different takes on everything, and not all of it is true or accurate. And a young menstruator or a menstruator who's older may not have the resources to know the difference. So certainly I think we should all be working to promote the unbiased sources of truth on menstrual hygiene education. Organizations like Wash United and period.org is a great place to start. There's so many different organizations that have these toolkits. I mean, I think I have an 11-year-old daughter, and she has the period.org flyer, one-pager printed out in her bedroom for what you need to know if you get your period. And I gave it to some of her friends too, because it can happen at very earlier ages all the time. So having that access to information is always good. I do think the textbooks, while I haven't seen one come home yet from our Toronto school system, I'm not sure what that looks like these days, and I think it probably varies greatly depending on the school board and the politics of the area.
Yep.
I would venture a guess that it's, I would hope very straightforward and scientific.
Yeah.
I would also venture a guess that they're probably only educating the girls on their menstrual cycle and probably not that in depth.
Yeah.
I do think that young men should understand it as well. I think we need to understand each other's bodies better because, I mean, the other day I saw a video of Jimmy Kimmel's, from Jimmy Kimmel, where he interviewed men about menstruation, and I mean, one of them thought that you took a tampon out and wrung it out to get the liquid out so you could reuse it, and another one thought that women lost 2 gallons of blood during one period.
Wow.
I mean, it was hilarious, but it was also very telling. Yeah. And then I also think that I think that it should be something that we need to culturally work on in all of our societies about talking about openly at home. I mean, my girls know that there's no question about menstruation or their bodies or their feelings that's off the table. Mm-hmm. And I think in schools, absolutely, they should be talking about it in schools and no one should feel embarrassed about it. Yeah. I know some schools, like here, we have a Catholic school system, and sometimes there are some sort of hangover effects from past perceptions that you will see permeate through generations, and you still see it a little bit. I do think it's improving and it's getting better, but I think, people sort of bring their own reservations from their own upbringings into those situations and maybe are not as open about it as they could be, when really it's just a natural fact of life that we should be able to talk about factually. Yeah. And on that, I just have to say, it drives me crazy that my daughters have been corrected at school when they referred to their vagina as a vagina with their teacher, and they've been asked to call it private parts. And my response was, do you have a nickname for your arm? Like, yeah, why? Yeah. That's just my response. Yeah, there are many things.
So what do you think, like, so say for people, I feel like the current generations right now, like that sort of I guess like perception on like women's bodies, but like everyone's bodies, that it's sort of changing how we approach it and talk about it. What about people who finish school, say like you're in workspaces now, or like you're in like sports spaces, or just even like public areas, and say like, you need to address something about it, or even if like in work, like you can't come in because your period is that bad, you don't know how to address it, maybe because of stigma. So how would we get around that?
Yeah, I do think, I mean, that's a very complicated thing. It is incredibly difficult because, I have a male boss myself, and we talk about periods regularly. Obviously, it's our work. Yeah. It's never on a personal level. But I do have to say, like, would I feel comfortable saying to him, I'm just feeling awful because of my period? I'm not suggesting anyone should do that. I think it's, if people want to keep it private, they should. Yeah. I do think that employers, people in leadership positions, should be aware that they may not be, they don't need all of the information to be understanding. I think that we're all adults, we're professionals, this is our livelihood. You should never jump to the assumption that someone is not at their best or missing work for a reason. I guess don't pass judgment on their reasoning. They have something that they need to deal with, and you should let them deal with it. You don't necessarily need the details. And I do think that understanding the role that menstruation and things like menopause even can play in a female or transgendered person's work life can be significant. And I think that's a place that we have to get to culturally, where where you just sort of assume that these might be factors at play, and the person might want to keep it quiet, and you don't need all the questions. It's kind of the same where if someone needs to take a medical leave, you don't ask why. Yeah. You just say, take your medical leave. Yeah. That's, if they can know if they want to tell you, then that's fine, but they do not need to. So it's kind of a similar situation, I think.
What about say like a woman who takes it quite personally that they don't know if this is something they want to bring up with their boss, and they feel they don't want to come off like in some way where like, oh, she's like making excuses, or like, you know, because obviously people who don't get their period don't know, you know, what we go through internally, but that person may also feel like, I have my period, I'm in pain, but I still want to show up, otherwise people may think of me differently. How do you sort of come off that sort of, I guess, that mental fear?
Yeah, I I I think that you know, if you are feeling affected negatively by your period but you still want to show up for work. I think some of us now, we have hybrid situations, which is a really great thing to have for that situation. And I've certainly been in that situation before where I've just been absolutely unable to to function because of severe dysmenorrhea, which I think a lot of us get. And but I think if you do want to show up, I think maybe, you know, you can just say, I'm just not feeling my best today. There are some people who aren't going to understand that. And I think that that's where we have to sort of segment in our mind that, and I don't want to be too, because I know, you know, in a lot of cases it's your livelihood. You do not want to impact, like, you don't want to negatively impact your position at work because it's your livelihood. So it'd be a really tricky tightrope to walk. But I think, you know, just being honest with the people around you and saying, you know, I'm just really not feeling my best today, but I want to show up. I'm here to do my best, and I'm just looking for some grace or some understanding. I think that using those communication tools with the people around you, even if, you know, and you don't have to mention menstruation, you don't have to mention that it's a period issue, but just like showing a little bit of vulnerability, but also being confident that, you know, this is a normal thing. We're not robots. You know, even if you don't have your period, you're not always going to be on top of it. And we just need to give each other that grace, and also expect that you deserve that grace from other people. And then if you do have a manager who has an issue with that, I think, honestly, I have a friend who's a CEO who he told me that he read a book when he first became a CEO at a very young age. He read a book about parenting, even though he has no kids, because talking to children, sometimes you will find yourself talking to adults in the same way that you would talk to a child, just because we're not always all there emotionally mature on all issues, right? It kind of depends on where we're at in our journey and how we were brought up. So sometimes if you do have to have a conversation with a manager, I'm not suggesting that you condescend on them, but just be the adult in the room and just say, you know, I'm sorry, I do want to do better. I'm just not there today. I'd like to work with you on, you know, like, there are some days that I'll have like this, but I will do my best, and you know, I'm a valuable person here. I'm a valuable employee. And I think that sometimes people find that disarming, and as long as there's no hostility, I do think that people want to come to they want to be understood. And then once they feel validated and understood, they'll seek to understand as well. So unfortunately, you will find people that you have to do that emotional labor for, but it does happen.
Wow, that's a very like heavy subject. I didn't realize that was gonna happen. But it's amazing to know. Let's talk a little bit about I guess like access to resources, because that's a big one for you. And the brands involved here as well right now, and it's just free access to resources. Could you go a little bit into how that sort of came about, and then the importance of it?
Sure. So like resources like pads and tampons?
Yeah.
So so I think we all have seen vending machines in women's washrooms since, birth. So the idea is that businesses would provide toilet paper and paper towel and soap for free because that's reasonable to expect, but pads and tampons were guarded behind a paywall of 25 cents per tampon or more. And the idea, I guess, was that this would be would pay for itself and be a revenue generator. And I think it came up in over the past, I don't even know how long, because honestly, I'm a little bit ashamed of how long it took me to clue into the fact that this was ridiculous. It took working with Aunt Flo for me to say, oh my God, why on earth are we paying for this? Yeah. So Citron Hygiene has had paid vending units for most of its existence in washrooms. And I can tell you right now that the money collected from those vending machines is so insignificant you wouldn't believe it. So I think that a lot of businesses are living under this assumption or this guise that if they put out free period products, it's going to cost them, like it's going to drain their revenue or something. But if they put out a paid machine, it'll pay for itself, which is just not the case. So what usually happens is a woman goes to the washroom, she needs a tampon, it costs 25 cents, she doesn't have a quarter on her, and so she's stuck rolling up toilet paper, which is absurd because it's not that absorbent in public washrooms. So Citron Hygiene started talking with Aunt Flo several years ago, or a couple of years ago, I believe, and then we partnered officially in 2022. And when we partnered, Citron Hygiene made the commitment that we would no longer sell paid vends to our customers. The reason being that we recognized the absurdity of it, and that as a for-profit business, we would promote change by pushing our customers to come on board with us and recognize the importance of having period products in washrooms as just like they would have soap, and they have us refill soap for our customers, right? So our mission is to get these into every away from home washroom, every business across Canada, US, and UK. And the reason being that people, especially students, do not always have access to these resources. One of the ways these resources is often managed is that it will be kept behind a desk in an administrative office in education facilities, which is also something that is better than nothing, but also when you're talking about stigma, shame, embarrassment, let's say, a young female student is not comfortable talking about, her period in front of, the other students that are in the administrative office or the other teachers. They're going and having to ask permission for something that they require. I mean, if you can imagine, it's as absurd as someone saying, can I have some toilet paper? I really need to go to the bathroom. It's just ridiculous. So we're working to try and help organizations understand the absurdity of keeping period products outside of the washroom behind a desk. I heard about a stadium at one point who had it at the concession stand. If you needed period products, you could go to the concession stand and ask in front of everyone for a tampon, which is just, again, better than nothing, but not great. So, yes, the resources should be available in the washrooms to anyone who needs them. And, I mean, this can make the difference between someone going to a class in high school that they absolutely need for the opportunities in their education going forward, or not just a class. It can make the difference for an entire week of school. It's a significant issue, and I think access to resources is really I think that if you talk about it like that to some businesses and organizations who are not sort of in this conversation, I think that it needs to be taken down to brass tacks that it's they don't quite understand just how limited the access to resources can be for some people.
Yeah.
So you really do have to educate them on what that means, because it does mean that it needs to be available when and where menstruators need it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else I missed there that you were wanting me to go into, but yeah, just let me know if there's anything unclear.
You're good. How would you say, because you're saying like, you know, if you were to like pitch these ideas to organizations, you need to be really like, you need to really maneuver around it to get to your point about it. So what about, I'm not just saying just for girls, but like people in general who sort of want to associate themselves more with this sort of line of work where there's just like awareness for, you know, like period awareness, education, helping people get their resources. How do like people, like communities of people, get access and information to work in this sort of field?
Right. I think so. There are a couple ways come to mind. One way that I've seen some young activists get involved is that they'll start an initiative at their own school.
Okay.
If they're at a school that doesn't have, or in their own community. So if they're in a school or a community that just has issues with access to period products, then they'll start becoming advocates within their own school. And we've seen, I mean, Aunt Flo has worked with some very young advocates who get involved and just sort of fearlessly go. Actually, the Aunt Flo website has sort of like a student page where it's how to advocate in your school. It's a really fantastic resource. And so you can just visit that page, and they give you the steps and recommendations for who to talk to, how to talk about it, how to educate, if you can believe it, how to educate the adults, how to educate your educators on this issue. And a lot of them have found great success being those leaders in their space.
Okay.
On a broader community level. I mean, if you live in a smaller community, there may not be any chapters, but there are organizations like I know period.org has chapters, and there are so many other grassroots levels. I think Dignity Matters is the name of another one. In Toronto here, we have one called Tampon Tuesday. There are so many, and I mean, a quick Google search will show them to you. And they do things like set up period product drives where, you know, you'll have like a drop off, sort of like a food drive, but for period products.
Okay.
There are packing parties. There are, you know, these chapters and grassroots organizations have, they want people to be involved because it means they can do more. So it's just as simple as sending an email or a DM and saying, hey, can I help out in some way? And sort of starting that networking. And if you are in a smaller community that doesn't have anything like this, you can get in touch with a larger organization who will happily give you steps for starting up your own chapter and starting to do work like that in your own community. And then you sort of start building those connections and building that environment around you. And it just will probably snowball, because I think that's what it's done for most people that I've spoken to, is they just sort of stepped into it and just never stepped out of it. They just sort of kept it going. Because it is such a community working on these important issues.
I guess like you wouldn't necessarily, you know, like need to come from a certain like educational background or like a career, isn't it? Like it's quite adaptable, especially when you're building a community from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like on a broad scale, I think, you know, we often forget how transferable so many skills are.
Yep.
We all have different competencies that are sort of innate to us.
Yeah.
I think it's about understanding your own strengths and, you know, areas that you really want to, that you're good at, but areas that you want to learn more about, and just really using those skill sets to help out. So, I mean, I have a degree in urban planning, like urban
Yeah.
studies, and I'm in marketing because I discovered after school that I was really good at communications.
Yeah.
I don't have a degree in communications, but I did focus on that area, and it sort of took me down a path. I think but that skill is very transferable. You know, I could have done any number of things with that skill. I happened to follow this path, but, you know, I think the same thing is with advocacy. Organizations need all sorts of different people with different strengths in order to thrive. It's sort of part of building a diverse community. So you have different perspectives, different strengths, and you sort of all together you're stronger. So I think it's good to recognize in yourself what you bring to the table, and also recognize the parts that you would really like to learn more about. I mean, everyone should be a lifelong learner. I think growth mindset is one of the greatest terms that I've heard in my career, because it's so important to continue, you know, soaking up information from the people around you, processing it, having conversations with people, understanding different perspectives, and then we're all better for it in the end.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so no special skills required. Just participate, have an open mind, and be ready to put in some work. Really
amazing. I'm gonna check if anyone has any questions at this point. Teresa, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I'm good for now, thank you.
I think
has GirlUpUK done much menstrual like advocacy work or workshops or conversations? Like, have you worked on anything yet in the UK, or is this something you're looking to work on more?
So I don't know, Teresa, like you've been here a little bit before me.
I can't speak for GirlUpUK because I'm just getting involved on a regional level, but for GirlUpESP, which is my school, we've done a hygiene drive actually on our London campus. So UCP has 6 different campuses across Europe, and on our London campus we've done a hygiene drive last November, I think.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. It's one of those items that at food banks, like I know Food Banks of Canada every year during their holiday drive, they always say, you know, the most requested item that we have the least of is menstrual hygiene products. So I know it's one of those things that even during food drives, I try to always donate. Actually, this year my husband had a food drive happening at work, and I made him give tampons to it. I'm going to work with a huge box of tampons.
So yeah, I think that because this is like the first sort of menstrual themed event that we are doing, it definitely feels like something we do want to build on. And because you said like it's very much just about like commitment and passion and wanting to get into a community like this, I think is a nice start to building a community for GirlUpUK. And hopefully doing a lot more with you guys, because this just feels like such a refreshing amount of information compared to what people usually like to share. Yeah.
Not people. You need to get used to talking so openly about periods, but it doesn't take long.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that you were saying about like how frustrating it is to sort of like always think about how much you need to pay for like menstrual products. I think like after I initially had a chat with you and I had to go buy pads, I was just like comparing like the different brands and their different prices. I was just like, what? No, I don't even want to buy them right now.
I know.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. Yeah, I remember being in university on a very tight budget and just going and buying period products every month for
Yeah.
$35 felt like such a huge amount of money every single time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think we're okay to wrap this up. I don't see any questions coming in, but thank you so much, Krista, for everything that you've shared with us. I know there's a lot more to come, but thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. This has been delightful. So
No
nice
worries.
meeting you
Thank you so
guys.
much.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Happy
Thank
Menstrual Hygiene Day.
Thank you. You too. And have a great Friday, everyone.
Thank you, you
No
too. Bye.
worries. Bye.
Bye.